Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third lecture of the 2021 to 2022 season of the Middle East Librarians Association's Social Justice Lecture Series. My name is Denise Sufi. I'm the Metadata Librarian for Middle Eastern Languages and Special Collections at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I'll be your host today. I'd like to thank the MELA Social Justice Committee for helping me organize this event and the rest of the series. Thanks also to Harvard University for providing the Zoom access, and to everyone who donated to our fundraising campaign so we could offer honorariums to all our speakers. Just a quick reminder that we have not yet met our goal for this season. So if you have anything to spare to support our series, the link is in the chat. I'm going to add that now. This lecture series, hosted by the Middle East Librarians Association Social Justice Committee, aims to increase awareness of social justice principles in our professional practice, and to also bring attention to how libraries and archives are supporting or failing to support crucial research on issues related to social justice. The first season of our series, entitled Stories and Silences, Research on Race in the Middle East, hosted researchers working on race and racism in the Middle East, broadly defined, and/or its diasporas. For this season, we're inviting librarians, archivists, curators, and cultural heritage protectors from around the world who handle materials from the nebulous region we call the Middle East to discuss issues of neutrality, colonialism, and diversity within their institutions and experiences. Now, on to the main event. Today, we are honored to have two speakers from the American University of Beirut. Fatmeh Sharafuddin was recently appointed as the interim library director at the University Libraries. She has been working in academic libraries for more than 20 years, moving from e-resources to reference and instruction, then becoming the associate university librarian for research and academic collaboration services. In addition to her previous experience in cataloging, she is currently involved in several cultural heritage digitization projects. She represents the library at AMICAL, a consortium of American international universities, and works with colleagues on addressing issues connected to applying American standards outside the country. Basma Shabani, Associate University Librarian for Cataloging and Metadata Services, has had long experience in implementing library systems and automating the library catalog, beginning with the Mark 21 format, introducing RDA, and adapting the Dublin Core format for the library's digital collections. Basma is involved in most digitization projects at the university libraries, including Arabic Collections Online from 2012, building up the Palestinian Oral History Thesaurus from 2014, and Al Adab Magazine Archives, 2014 to 2017. So without further ado, please enjoy today's lecture, Challenges Facing Catalogers in Describing and Indexing Middle Eastern Books and Periodicals.
We are representing today the libraries at the American University of Beirut, and I don't know if you are familiar with this university. It's one of the oldest universities in the Middle East, and it's a pride in Lebanon. It is one among the first liberal arts universities in the region. It is a high-ranking university, and till today it's still among the highest ranking in the region. At the AUB, we offer a program in Arabic and Middle Eastern Studies through the CAMES program, Center for Arabic and Middle Eastern Studies, which receives students from from Lebanon, from the Arab world, and international students and exchange students. Also, we have a program of intensive Arabic in the summertime. We teach courses on Middle Eastern Studies in the Arabic and History departments. So we have a big demand for Arabic materials, and we do provide the university library collections for our researchers and international researchers. And our collection is really well thought after because we have a rich collection of historical collection of Arabic books and journals. We have long runs of journals of Al-Nahda and long runs of newspapers from Lebanon and different countries in the Arab world, sometimes not available in those countries. We have our special collection. We started it maybe 20 years ago, and it grew very well, and it's developing every year because it is. We provide a safe space, which a space and consistence and. Like a space maintained by qualified people to host these collections. So people come and donate their private libraries to the library. Today we have a big collection of rare books, document, manuscripts, personal papers, artwork, and also AUB archives. Occasionally, the library fills the gap of the role of the National Library and the Heritage National institution because of the situation. We have a big collection of digital works. We have started a digital lab, a digitization lab, and now we have a digitization team. We have partnered with international organizations such as the ACO and Nafi Trust to digitize like out of copyright Arabic books. We have also digital collections with special projects such as the POHA, and these are external parties who came to the library with interviews with Palestinian refugees from the Palestinian camps in Lebanon, and we did this project with them. We have developed the digital library of Kamal Jumblat, which is also in partnership with the Kamal Jumblat family. All our projects are indexed using Library of Congress subject heading list, and also sometimes we do our own thesaurus according to the need. So our library catalog and our discovery tools have a big impact on our researchers. That's why we want our subject headings to be really the right way to reach our material, but this is not the case. We have a problem with subject classification because our subjects, there is a poor and superficial actually coverage of Middle Eastern subject in the Library of Congress, and sometimes we have biased coverage and biased assignment of subject headings. We don't know if this is intentional or accidental misrepresentation or bias, but it is at the root, it should be at the root of this conversation about social justice and inclusion. Like we do face several challenges describing the library materials, and they are not all coming from external or from international standards. We do have some local challenges, and these are due to the inconsistency in developing and updating standards in the Middle East and adopting them at the regional level. The special case of Arabic language is sometimes problematic. There is an inadequacy and bias in the international standards sometimes. So what are the problems in the local standards? In the Arab world, because the states are like independent from each others, there is no mechanism or approval or approved authority among Arab countries to mandate the use of a particular tool or standard. So people are left to do on their own what they want to do. Publishing practices lack any form of legalization or supervision to standardize the way information is presented on the title page, or to give to assign an identification number such as the SSN and ISBN, give a copyright notice, or provide a title page, an index, or citations and bibliographies. So all these are left optional for the publisher. Initiative to do knowledge organization at the Arab world level were several, and many like associations and maybe intellectuals worked on this, and we have several examples of them, such as the Khazindar, the Maknaz, and the Jamia Tezorai, and the Alexo initiative for Arabic subject headings and translating of the Dewey Decimal Classification, translating and expanding. But all these projects are not really comprehensive, and they do at some point stop or discontinue. There is a serious effort in building the Arab Union catalog in Saudi Arabia, but this project in itself has its own limitations in terms of diversity and inclusion. About the Arabic language, it is on the one side a rich language with heritage of publishing and information organization and even sophistication of knowledge organization. Today it represents 25 Arab-speaking countries and 466 million speakers, but unfortunately it has very minimal presence in the accumulation of modern research, knowledge, and technological innovation. So what is the problem with the international standards we use? We use the international standards. I think you all know the Library of Congress subject heading list, authority files, AECR tools, and now RDA, Dublin Core, and we use the Dewey Decimal Classification System for call numbers, assigning call numbers. We find all the time bias and superficial subject classification in subjects related to Islam, Arabic language, Arab literature, history, and politics of the Middle East. This is changing now and is improving every year. We can notice that, but the problem is that how to go like backwards. Not like when I started a project on Al-Nakba, for example, when we did the POHA, the Palestinian Refugee Oral History Project, there was no subject Nakba. Now there is a Nakba. So how to go and add this subject to all the books before adding the new subjects that now the Library of Congress is adding. It's going to be very hard to really do it retrospectively. My own reflection on using Library of Congress subject headings is like there is some inadequacy and bias. There's inconsistency in the degree of detail that they give for some subjects. So some subjects are really treated with very much detail and references and broader terms and broader and narrower terms, and others are a very limited presentation and sometimes ignored. We can see political bias and lack of representation of various viewpoints in representing like sensitive subjects. And some subjects we think they are purely overlooked because of lack of interest or unawareness about these like landmarks of subjects of other cultures. Names and geographic names are not always accurately understood or spelled or written. The same could apply to the Dewey Decimal System. Like generally speaking, I can say that intentional or unintentional bias and negligence are partly the product of the existing power structures and political hegemony. Like their names indicate, the Library of Congress subject heading, Anglo-American cataloging rules, and Dewey Decimal Classification System first and foremost, they were developed to serve the needs of their stakeholders. This issue was discussed in details in several publications that we list at the end of this presentation, and my colleague will give more examples. Like now with your initiative and with the statement of ALCTS about diversity, we have hope maybe things could change. It will take some time, but like maybe librarians will start resisting bias, or people who are in charge of controlled vocabularies will start resisting bias and will start including other viewpoints. But I'm sure it's going to be a long way, because just learning about the subject illegal aliens and the very long road that it took to just get there and being now called illegal immigration, we can be sure that it's going to be a long way, and I'm sure we need to find other ways around prejudice and around bias, because even if we changed all the subject heading, and it will not happen, it's hard to go backward. So we need to find other solutions. We have the opportunities with the technology really to develop tagging and adding keywords to our records. We can develop research guides with all the subject headings that apply to a particular project, to a particular subject. We, like at AUB now, we are adding global subject headings, and we can do domain analysis and develop thesaurus as needed for special projects. For sure, our biggest aim, and I hope I'll do it when I'm still working, is to work on an ontology and introduce and like really benefit from linked data technology for Arabic ontologies. For now, I will leave the floor to my colleague, Basma, who will talk more about cataloging and classification.
Hello, everybody. I'm Basma Shibani. I'm Associate University Librarian for the Cataloging and Metadata Services. I joined the Department of Cataloging in 2012, and I continued the same strategy and the same policy of cataloging from my previous colleagues. So we are using now Library of Congress subject headings for indexing and catalog and for indexing and subject cataloging, and the Library of Congress name authority file for the name of authorities. And we were using AACR2 rules for describing materials before 2013, and after RDA came to the floor, we changed. In June 2013. We are using now RDA for cataloging, and we are using their relationships and the registry for linking in order to make a step ahead for the linked data in the future. We are using the decimal classification system for standardization and interoperability with other American universities. As Fatmi said, there's a bias in treating some subject, and mainly for classification using the Dewey classification. Mainly in Islam, Arabic language, and Arabic literature, history, and politics. Not because Islam, it is at the end of the other religion, because the class number, it will be so long, and it doesn't fit to be on the spine of the book. That's why. The same for the Arabic language and the Arabic literature. As I said, I follow the same strategy and the same tools of my colleagues since the 50s of the 20th century for describing non-Arabic library material for English and Western languages. And for the Arabic library materials and the languages using Arabic script, we are using translated English subject headings into Arabic, and we are adding at the same time the transliterated names and other authorities, in addition to the transliteration of the other fields of mark. As for the Library of Congress, I don't want to add more than Fatmi said as frustration, but I have to be just and fair, Library of Congress is standard authority that is helpful for catalogers and subject specialists all around the world. And thanks to the great effort done by specialists through decades. And Library of Congress Authority has been established to fulfill the needs of describing library materials for Library of Congress and other American libraries with pre-coordinated vocabularies in pre-digital age. Pre-digital age. This is what I want to focus on. There is no hostility against Islam or Orientalism in our approach to Library of Congress subject heading. We think it is just a gap of coverage in Islamic studies and Middle Eastern issues, and misunderstanding in multidisciplinary issues dealt with Islam, because Islamic scholars dealt with many multidisciplinary sciences. That's why it is covered in the subject of Arabic language and Middle Eastern studies. I want to highlight some gap in coverage. In Islam, for example, Islamic law, for example, includes fiqh and sharia, but these fiqh and sharia should not be under Islamic law as a whole. There are a lot of narrower terms under Islamic law, mixing fiqh and sharia at the same time. It is not just the case. Sharia, it's the law of Allah, of God, of Islam, and the fiqh is jurisprudence of the judges and Islamic scholars and imams and hadith transmitters. All are dealing with fiqh, not for the sharia, but these are not distinguished properly in Library of Congress subject heading, and it is making the cataloger a little bit perplexes how to deal with fiqh in particular, for example, or sharia in particular, if the text or the context is dealing only with this or not for that. For the Arabic language grammar, we have the same frustration. In Arabic language, there is nahu and sarf, tasrif, and conjugation, and also there's arud for the Arabic poetry. These are nahu and sarf. It's very difficult to differentiate in the Arabic language dash grammar in Library of Congress subject heading, all mixed together under one subject heading for more than one concept. The same for the Palestine question and the Israel settlement and massacres. These are political biased. We need a lot of subject heading dealing with these concepts, because in Arab countries we have this, we are dealing with this question, and we need to assign a subject heading more detailed for these concepts. Finally, the Palestinian, comma, Arabs. I can't understand why this comma and why this Arab. There's no other ethnicity as Palestinian. There's no only Arabs. There's a religious Palestinian, not ethnicity. For example, Palestinians, there's Christian Palestinian, Muslim Palestinians, Jewish Palestinians, but not Palestinian Arabs and other. For example, there's no Armenian. Maybe there's Armenian, but it is not assigned or not covered in the Library of Congress subject. So in my opinion, Palestinians should be Palestinians, and that's all, without this Arabs, because they are all Arabs before the Jewish colonization. We are lately in 2021, we discovered that there's new subject headings called Palestinian Nakba, 1947, 1948. It's added after 73 years of the events. As Fatmi said, how to go back to assign this subject for all the books or library materials we have. In my case, I did my best to add all Palestinian Nakba for all the library materials we have in our catalog. It is not easy work, but I did it. But it is not only for one subject heading. What about the other subject heading to be added if new after 73 years of the events, we have to think about other subject headings, new added subject headings. To avoid this frustration and to help our users to retrieve proper subject heading, AUB Libraries opted for local solution for uncovered subject heading. AUB Library have added a lot of local subject in English and Arabic to meet the need of the description of their Arabic and Islamic studies. And for the Palestine question and Palestinian refugees, all are not properly covered in Library of Congress subject heading. Since we are not in the library, we are not part or member of NACO and SECO, we feel free to add new local subjects to meet the needs of our users. Some example of the local practice. For example, Palestinian Nakba already done. I created before Palestinian Nakba, not Palestinian Nakba. Nakba was scope not about the Palestinian Nakba, but now because we are we take advantage of the new subject heading about Palestinian Nakba. So I added, as I already mentioned, in my catalog. But still, we need to highlight that there is no country code and mark for Palestine. There's no PS, for example, country code in Palestine. We have only West Bank and Gaza Strip for geographic for the publication. And you know that a lot of books has been published in Palestine before 1947. So how can we assign a country code for these books? Another example is massacre in Palestine. In Library of Congress subject, there's only massacre Palestine, Dawaima, and the Tantura. What about the other massacres? I discovered a lot of massacres while I'm working on the Palestinian oral history archives, and we have in our catalog a lot of library materials that is dealing with massacres. Not only these two massacre in Palestine. So it is not well covered. To be honest, it is not well covered. Another example for Ashura. Ashura in the Library of Congress subject, I think they call it 10th of Muharram. It is true, 10th of Muharram, but there's no literature dealing with this concept, 10th of Muharram. It is the date of Ashura, it's the 10th of Muharram. But most of literature dealing with Ashura, and they assign Ashura for this concept, 10th of Muharram. I'm not sure why they insist to keep it like this and not to change it like other subject headings. For the local practice, also for Israeli invasion of Lebanon, they called it the Lebanon War in 2006. It is not only a war, it is invasion. It is not only intervention, it is invasion. The same for the invasion in 1982. Because we have a lot of literature about this, and we feel as we are not expressing, we are not expressing very well and describing very well the subject of this literature for our end user. I already mentioned about the Arabic language grammar and Nahu. There is no Nahu, Sarf, Balagha, Urud, Arabic language, and in the Library of Content subject headings and link data, Arabic. If I search for Arabic language, the result comes after a lot of other subject headings. Even, for example, Judeo-Arabic language comes before Arabic language. Even A comes before J. I'm not sure why. Some other subject heading like God, Islam. Why not to use Allah? Allah is the genuine name for God in Islam, and we have to change according to our end user. The same for Israel-Arab War, 1967. We use the term An-Naksa, this Harb al-Ayyam al-Sitta or An-Naksa in Arabic literature, but we don't find it as at least used for in Israel-Arab War 1967. The same for the Iraq War 2003. Why not the invasion of Iraq to be at least as used for? It is not added as used for. We have a lot of books about An-Nahda al-Arabiyya, An-Nahda in Arab countries. So we added An-Nahda with the equivalent in Arabic An-Nahda al-Arabiyya, and with all the used for An-Nahda, Arabs, Arabic Nahda, Arabic awakening, Renaissance, Arabic countries, etc. Lately, I discovered that American literature, Lebanese American authors, has been removed from the linked data authorities and not added as used for. We are using this American literature, Arabic American authors, as Adab al-Mahjar, al-Adab al-Arabi fi al-Mahjar. We have a lot of literature about this, but it is not assigned properly in the Library of Congress. Now, for the Arabic name authorities, there's no one way for formulating Arabic old names. For example, Al-Farabi, it is one name and one part of the name Farabi. His name is Abu Nasr Muhammad bin Muhammad al-Farabi. And there are other very complicated, like Ibn Sa'i, Abu Talib, Ali bin Anjab, and the name, the date of birth and the date of death are very, very complicated. To avoid these complications, I'm adding always, if it's available, the URI for the Arabic names, not for all the names, if I can find them in the linked data Library of Congress authorities. This complication comes from the date of birth and the death conversion from Hijri into Gregorian, and made the name authority very complicated. This is one of Gibran, Khalil Gibran. This is one authority. I'm using the Library of Congress authority with the equivalent in 700, the Arabic equivalent in 700, name C also, and with all the other used for form of the name of Gibran, Khalil Gibran. His name is Khalil, not Khalil, but because the first book he published, Al-Nabi, the Prophet, he published with Khalil Gibran. That's why till now the Library of Congress adopted this name, even though the other publication of Gibran are Khalil Gibran, not Khalil Gibran. This is a BIB record of Gibran, Khalil Gibran. This is in Arabic with transliteration in English, and with the URL, you can see here, Gibran Khalil, 880-101 linking, Gibran Khalil, 1983-1931, and followed by the URI, unique identifier of this authority from the Library of Congress linked data authorities. This help a lot in avoiding any mistake in searching the author, the name authorities. And at the same time, you can see that I am using the RTA relationships and the registry for the other manifestations and for the expressions, other expressions. For example, here, the translation of the Garden of the Prophet in English. And I added the electronic reproduction manifestation of the same manifestation, the same book for Gibran. AUB is part of the project for an Arabic collection online, ACO. 7 American libraries, including AUB, are participating in the project for digitizing and discovering the public domain Arabic printed books. To cope with Arabic and transliterated authorities, as I let you see now, a global update has been made to comply with the LOC authorities, subject and names. The previous name authorities, usually compliant with Al-A'lam al-Zirkli, have been added as equivalent names used for or cross-reference for the updated authorized access point. We need to reconstruct the pre-coordinated vocabularies to be post-coordinated vocabularies. Subject headings are usually used for broad description of library material, despite this, while the descriptors in thesaurus described in-depth journal articles. Pre-coordinated vocabularies were useful for card catalog before the digital age, but post-coordinated vocabularies or direct access to a subject like descriptor of a thesaurus are more suitable for library systems. Conclusion. Local cataloging and classification schemes will continue to evolve as long as Library of Congress authorities couldn't meet the need of Middle Eastern libraries and end user, despite the standardization and internationalization. Many Arabic libraries opted to translate authorities of Library of Congress with enlargement of the scope of Islam, Hadith, Arabic language, and Palestine question in order to meet the needs of their end user. Pre-coordinated subject heading could be converted into ontologies. Linked data and Arabic ontologies. It is time to combine the effort and to create Arabic ontologies dealing with specialized domain. Each domain would be part of dataset on ontologies within the link open data. Many of the available Arabic thesauri are able to be converted to ontologies using RDF framework. For example, we have the Magnas online thesaurus published by Schumann Foundation, and Arabic Agrovoc published by FAO, Shama thesaurus published by Shama Association for Education, and finally we at the AUB built up Poha thesaurus dealing with the Nakba and Palestinian refugees and Palestinian question terms and descriptors. You can reach it through this link. Finally, I want to thank you for inviting us, me and Fatmi, to present our frustration and our proposals for the improvement and for the inclusion in MELA and with other librarians dealing with Middle Eastern studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Basma and Fatme, for that great presentation. I know I really learned a lot from it. We'd like to take your questions now. So if you have any questions, please put them into the chat. I did see that there was a comment from Iman, which my apologies, I am looking for it. Here it is. And I know Fatma, you said that you would like to discuss her comment. So Iman wrote, maybe AUB and other libraries in the region can explore possibilities of joining the LC SECO program, maybe as a funnel that can enable them to have better representation of certain subjects by submitting new LCSHs or proposing changes to existing LCSHs.
My idea is yes, we are open to do that. I think Basma has an experience with this. She will talk about it.
Yes, I'm happy to join SECO and NECO, but because I am adding a lot of local authorities, and I'm not sure they accept my local authorities. That's why I didn't interfere in SECO and NECO. Maybe if I collect all my new new
Local.
subject heading, local subject heading, and send them to SEICO to discuss them. And after we can join if they accept or not, according to their reply.
There's a comment also by Hannah Kauri. I think, yes, we are interested in Majda the Sherbini work very much. And the problem is in Arabic, as we said, that there's a lot of initiatives now also in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and there's money to do that, and in Qatar, but they are really, they are independent from each other, and sometimes they don't know about each other. So we need to find a way to really work together, and sometimes we have to be open about working together and not to hide information or to worry about the credit, who will get the credit. Like there are problems with working sometimes with like collecting efforts, but we need to do that, and we will be contacting Ms. Majda Sherbini. We hope we can join any effort in this regard, because alone we cannot do it. We are just work here 8 to 5, like we cannot change the world, but we will try to join effort. We need to join effort, and we will approach everyone we think could help. Yeah.
And there's a comment from Nada, very interesting examples on the flaws in Middle Eastern subject headings related to Arabic and Islam. And Tharwat has put the link to POHA into the chat.
Yeah, and we have a question, like, does any one of you work on a separate list of subject heading for Arabic? Like librarians who work in cataloging, do you know of any other than Majida Sherbini?
I guess that is no.
If we start an initiative, would MELA be willing to run a survey for us about this?
I think that's a great idea. Okay, so we have, and I think you would find people willing to do that. So Amanda is asking, are there any organizations within Lebanon or in the Middle East that discuss these issues between institutions?
Yes, we are discussing these matters with the LAU Library, Lebanese American University Library, with Mrs. Bogdana Hajjar, who's the catalog, the head of cataloging department, and we are exchanging ideas all the time. It is not only from my side, and we are always with contact with other universities about subject headings, mainly about, and with the National Library. They are building their own authorities, not Library of Congress, but an Arabic. It's very great authorities. So we can start from Lebanon, and after we can let the other join us if they are interested.
Yeah, it is still not organized. Maybe we should organize it and maybe like form a formal group and start inviting people from other universities or other countries. Maybe we can start doing that.
Hannah mentioned the Union Arabic catalog. I don't know if you'd like to say anything about that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's good, the Arabic Union catalog, but for the AUB catalog, we are using the Arabic and the English subject headings in Arabic records and Arabic titles. It is not the same as the Arabic Union catalog. There's difference.
Yeah, actually it's a good initiative, but I think also the service is paid, I think, and we would prefer if this would have been has a board from all Arab countries. It's in Saudi Arabia and it represents a university in Saudi Arabia. So like the Library of Congress, like it's a great initiative, but it is limited to this entity or to this country. So we wish if it were more inclusive, and if it included on the board people like from Egypt or Tunisia or Lebanon, because the Arab world is really very diverse, and this is what we are looking for, like to represent all diverse cultures and like viewpoints. But it is a great initiative. It is a very and a successful initiative, but it cannot represent every country in the Arab world. This is what my impression.
And Rita commented that replying to Fatima's question, as Basma said, we at Shema are working regularly on educational thesaurus, not on subject headings. And Iman commented that there was an attempt to have Seiko Lite and to use Wikidata to add topics, but this has been suspended for now. Hopefully that will get reinvigorated to help with the Seiko process. And Amanda, I think you were commenting on MELA being involved. Was that with Seiko, I think? And she basically said, I love that idea, and MELA would love to be a part of it as well. Let's see here. And then there's a question from Till, but ARUC doesn't seem to have an API. Am I missing something?
What is the question?
He writes, but ARUC doesn't seem to have an API. Am I missing something?
What is ARUC?
The Arabic Union Catalog, I think he was.
It doesn't have, seem to have an API. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, but I know that it exists, and they do a lot of activities. They are even active in giving webinars, and they are really serious and active. Like, what would you need the API for? Just if you can, so I can understand the question. Do you mean like you cannot upload records to their catalog? This is what you mean? Yeah, maybe you have to pay to upload. Yeah, that's why it's a paid service, and I think it's a monitored service. Like, they would not accept also the subject heading that you did. Like, they do have a committee that decides on what subject headings. We are going again to the same problem.
To download any subject, any list or any record.
Yeah, it's not open. I'm sure it's not open. Like, I understand the Till's point. I think it's not open. Yes, it is a very
it's commercial services.
It's well developed, and it's really standardized, but it's not inclusive. No, you are not allowed to go and participate and upload records. Unless they really double check and they approve or disapprove. It's not automatic for sure.
You can search the catalog, but you can't download the record.
Well, we are coming to the end of our time. So I'll just point out one more comment from Fatma Al-Bazal. She thanks the both of you for your talk and says that the Lebanese National Library faced the same dilemmas that you talked about while covering our Arabic materials. And we have created our own list of terms in Arabic to properly cover our materials. And they're hoping that this debate can be a starting point for future collaboration. I just want to thank everyone for coming, and again to Fatma and Basma for their fabulous talk and discussion. We really appreciate you accepting our invitation to join the second season of our lecture series. We will add subtitles to the recording before it is uploaded to YouTube. For our next lecture in March, we'll be hosting Asli Davaz from the Women's Works Library and Information Center Foundation in Istanbul. More information on that lecture will be coming soon. Just as a reminder, do donate to our GoFundMe campaign if you would like the series to continue. The link is in the chat. Thank you again, and we hope to see you at the next lecture. Bye, everyone.